Hello, everyone. I hope you're all having a great day so far. My name is Jurassic KM, and yeah, we're doing another one of these. Welcome to the Jurassic Park Comic-Thon. It's exactly what it sounds like. I'm going to go over every Jurassic Park comic ever published, just like what I'm doing with Predator. However, there aren't nearly as many comics of our favorite genetically engineered critters running amok as there are of the interstellar trophy hunters, as there were only about a dozen or so Jurassic titles published. I'm interested to see if I will be more or less critical of these comics than in the Predator videos, simply because I am more of a Jurassic Park fan. So in case you haven't been watching the Predator Comic-Thon series, I'm going to introduce the comic, specify which version I own, if I own it, give a brief summary on the comic's plot, and share my thoughts with some minor spoilers showing up, most likely. We're also going to keep the rating system simple. Thumbs up if I liked it, thumbs sideways if I was indifferent, and thumbs down if I didn't like it. Got it? Good. We're looking at, well, Jurassic Park, the comic adaptation of the film that was published in 1993 by Topps Comics. I have the original 4 individual issues, as well as the reprinted collection Classic Jurassic Park Volume 1 by IDW Publishing from 2010. Like a lot of comic adaptations, this is an abridged version of the events from the film. The first couple of things that I noticed is that in the opening scene, the gatekeeper is referred to as Jose instead of Joffrey, and for some reason, Ian Malcolm is overseeing the Velociraptor transfer instead of Robert Muldoon. I hope that someone misread the name Muldoon as Malcolm, and by the time they realized their mistake, it was too late to fix it. The events do not play out in an exact one-to-one that they do in the film, but we're not here to pick this thing apart panel by panel. I mean, I could, but it'd take a hell of a lot longer than 3 minutes that YouTube shorts are allowed to be. I must say, I am not a fan of the art. Most of the younger male characters look super jacked. None of the characters fully resembled their movie counterparts. And I know that the artist probably didn't have access to the dinosaur designs for the sake of keeping them under wraps to prevent leaks. But wow, these dinosaurs are ugly. Like every single one of them. What I do like about this comic adaptation, though, is that there is some dialogue that was cut from the movie that was also present, I believe, in the junior novelization, like Alan and Ellie discussing their finds in Montana in greater detail before they try the thumper again, as this adaptation is based on both the script by David Koepp and the adaptations by Michael Crichton and Malia Scotch-Marmo. That might explain some of the changes of the names to the background characters, too. Even if you try to look at this at face value and not 33 years of hindsight of how big of an impact the film would have, Jurassic Park is honestly not that great of a comic because the sense of awe and wonder doesn't translate well to the page due to the unpleasant visuals, not to mention the pacing covers the first hour of the film in the first 3 issues and then crams the second half into the final issue. I'm giving Jurassic Park, the comic adaptation, a thumbs down. Honestly, you're just better off watching the movie, but we're looking at Jurassic Park number 0, Genesis, from 1993 by Topps Comics. I never had the original version of this issue, but it was later collected in the Classic Jurassic Park Volume 2, Raptor's Revenge, by IDW Publishing in 2011. This is one of 2 number 0 comics that served as prequels to the events of the film, with this one showing John Hammond giving Donald Gennaro a tour of Jurassic Park in its infancy, where they bear witness to some of the construction of the park and the first hatching of a biological attraction. The writing includes a few references to specific lines in the film, so I can appreciate that, but the art is still in that same style that the comic adaptation is in, so it does lose points for that. The cover art for both issue zeros are incredibly misleading, bordering on false advertising, if I'm being completely honest. Also, given Gennaro's attitude towards this whole thing, it feels like he would have gone back to the investors and told them to pull out of the project by the time this comic ends. But this whole comic is nothing more than a setup to foreshadow his death in the movie. Also, I doubt that this comic was ever canon because I don't think anyone really cared about that sort of thing in 1993 when Jurassic Park was a single film. Truth be told, I don't think any of the comics are canon, but even if, and that's a big if, this comic was canon, it has long since been retconned by Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. I'm giving Jurassic Park number 0, Genesis, a thumbs down, and we are not off to a good start with these. Today we are looking at Jurassic Park number 0, Betrayal from 1993 by Topps Comics. Much like Genesis, I never had the original version of this comic, but this one was also collected in Classic Jurassic Park Volume 2, Raptors' Revenge by IDW Publishing in 2011. This is the second of the two number 0 comics that served as prequels to the events of the film, with this one showing the series of events that brought Dennis Nedry to the decision to betray the park. This issue has the same art team as the last two books that we looked at, so that is a detriment to this book. However, I really like the writing and the plot of this comic. If I recall, the complaints that Nedry has about the park is a very simplified paraphrase of his concerns from the original novel. And while I don't necessarily feel sympathy for him, I can get where he's coming from, and this one serves as a much better prequel to the original film than Genesis did. Is it essential reading? Well, no, but it is still a fun read all the same, and I'm giving Jurassic Park number 0, Betrayal, a thumbs up. Today we're looking at Jurassic Park Raptor, a 2-issue series from 1994 by Topps Comic, which is the first of a trilogy of stories that many just refer to as the Raptor trilogy. I have the original 2 issues, as well as them collected in Classic Jurassic Park Volume 2, Raptors' Revenge by IDW Publishing in 2011. Picking up 3 days after the events of Jurassic Park, doctors Alan Grant and Ellie Sattler find themselves back on Isla Nublar to assist the U.S. Army with a cleanup operation of the island. However, a big game hunter sneaks onto the island to procure some of the wild velociraptor population, and chaos ensues. Right out of the gate, I think the art looks a little bit better here than it has for the last 3 issues. It isn't fantastic, but an improvement is an improvement. I wish there was a little bit more setup for the story because we're just thrown right into it with Alan and Ellie staring down the T-Rex while conversing with characters not from the film that are thrown at us with no introduction, but it reads like the audience should know these new faces. I'm kind of torn on Alan and Ellie's dialogue with one another, with Ellie wanting to actually spend some time with Alan one-on-one, despite being here as consultants for the U.S. Army, while Alan's mind is so focused on the mission and ensuring no velociraptors are left that it seems like he forgets that Ellie is his partner in a relationship, not just for the mission they're on. Again, I doubt that any of these comics are canon, but if this is how it was in the official timeline, no wonder Ellie left Alan, because he's married to his job. The action is pretty enjoyable. The velociraptors do get a couple of kills in, and this story ends with a cliffhanger that takes us right into the next entry. I'm giving Jurassic Park Raptor a thumb sideways. We're looking at Jurassic Park Raptors Attack, a 4-issue series from 1994 by Topps Comics and part 2 of the Raptor trilogy. I have the first 3 issues from its original run. Issue number 4 eluded me, but I do have the collected issues in Classic Jurassic Park Volume 2, Raptors' Revenge by IDW Publishing from 2011, and I swear this is the last time I will be mentioning that collection. Picking up immediately after the events of Raptor, Alan and Ellie have come under the care and capture of a Colombian criminal named Raphael, who has taken them and the surviving velociraptors with hopes of using the 2 scientists to train the dinosaurs as attack animals, bringing in the idea of weaponized dinosaurs long before Jurassic World did. The first issue has that similar jagged art style that Raptor had, but then switches to a smoother style for the rest of the series, which is a welcome change because the velociraptors look closer to their movie counterparts than before. Still not perfect, though. There are some scenes where the velociraptors are let loose against armed soldiers and politicians alike without taking any damage, so some might think that that's silly, but I think the wildest plot element in this story is that Robert Muldoon is still alive. Yeah, his survival is just kind of hand-waved away, and I always had a hard time buying this, even when I read these comics as a kid. Muldoon also considers Lawala, the hunter from Raptor, his blood brother, so his involvement here turns into a revenge plot that I still don't really buy into, and if I'm being honest, the final issue of this comic kind of turns into a mess. The first three issues were okay, though, so with that in mind, I'm giving Jurassic Park Raptors Attack a thumb sideways. We're looking at Jurassic Park Raptors Hijack, a four-issue series from 1994 by Topps Comics, and the conclusion of the Raptor trilogy. I have all four issues of its original run from 1994, as well as the collection of issues from Classic Jurassic Park Volume 3, Amazon Adventures, by IDW Publishing from 2011. The plot is that Alan, Ellie, Ian, and Robert are still in South America, tracking the last two surviving velociraptors through the Amazon, only for them to cross paths with Biosyn, which is the first time they've been named outright in the comics. This one gets kinda crazy. There's a bit with a gorilla fighting the velociraptors that ties into one of the Biosyn scientists, but it just feels like a really forced homage to King Kong, if I'm being completely honest with you. There's a subplot about the corporate espionage between InGen and Biosyn escalating so much that Hammond gets so fed up with Biosyn that he orders a tactical strike on one of their laboratories, killing some of their staff, only for Biosyn to retaliate against the survivors of the film in the Amazon. There's a hard lean into the Alan, Ellie, Ian love triangle, Muldoon shooting down helicopters and snapping necks like he's Frank Castle. It's all so over the top, it's enjoyably ridiculous. The art still isn't great, but I don't hate it either. One of the characters that was introduced in Raptor does return here in a villainous role, so I can appreciate the attempt to flesh out one of the new characters and provide a little bit more connective tissue to the previous story, but I'm not convinced it paid off entirely. Jurassic Park Raptors Hijack is an odd beast. There's a loud part of my brain that wants to thumbs down this one, but even if I enjoyed it for all the wrong reasons, I still enjoyed it. So I'm giving Jurassic Park Raptors Hijack a begrudging thumbs up. We're looking at Return to Jurassic Park, The Green Flame. Return to Jurassic Park was a 9-issue run by Topps Comics published in 1995, but those 9 issues covered 4 different stories, so they're being split in this Comic-Thon. This video covers issues 1 through 4, and I used to have at least a couple of the original issues, but I've lost those to time. However, I do have them collected in the Classic Jurassic Park Volume 4, Return to Jurassic Park Part 1 by IDW Publishing in 2012. The plot is that after an adrift U.S. Army soldier is picked up by a boat muttering something about a green flame, John Hammond sends his right-hand man, Edgar Prather, alongside Dr. Grant, Dr. Sattler, and Robert Muldoon back to Isla Nublar to infiltrate the U.S. Army's base of operations there and see what is going on, and of course, they aren't the only ones investigating. As a fan of the Kenner toys, I appreciate the T-Rex design in this book mimicking its color patterns, but I swear this comic pulls its dinosaur roster from the novel, since it includes Stegosaurus and Pterodactylus, so perhaps that explains the Rex's color pattern, or why they keep referring to the Rex as a male when she isn't. However, what bothers me is that this comic still shows dinosaurs as the leg-sprawled quadrupeds or tail-dragging upright theropods, older paleo-media, when Jurassic Park had been available on home media for a few months by the time this comic originally came out. So I don't see why such outdated designs were still allowed, making the art more miss than hit for me. The plot also doesn't flow the nicest either, and the surviving characters don't get any answers about what the green flame actually is, except for Hammond's right-hand man, but the readers don't actually see these answers, which leads me to conclude that this arc was a waste of my time. This one was rough, folks, and I'm giving Return to Jurassic Park, The Green Flame a thumbs down. But we're looking at Jurassic Park Annual, a one-shot from 1995 by Topps Comics. I used to have this original issue, but I don't remember what happened to it. However, I do have this one collected in Classic Jurassic Park Volume 3, Amazon Adventures by IDW Publishing from 2011. This is an anthology comic divided into 2 stories set in the Jurassic Park universe. The first, Death Lizards, is about a clutch of Dilophosaurus eggs that are washed ashore on the mainland from Isla Nublar, where they mature and attack a local small town 4 years later. I do like how the locals refer to them as the Hupia, which is a term used in the original novel. I love the art here, and it's unfortunate that it took this long, but this is the first comic where the dinosaurs actually look pretty close to their cinematic counterparts. This one doesn't get Raptors hijack crazy, but the big finale is a biker gang teaming up with the local police to take the spitters out, which is kind of awesome. The only real complaint that I have here is that there's a love triangle plot point that doesn't really add anything of value, so it should have been cut altogether. The second story, Sneakers, takes place before the film and is about a potential investor visiting the park with his daughter when something provokes the Tyrannosaur into a rampage. This is the weaker of the two stories, with decent art and an interesting take on the dinosaur's appearance, which I don't mind. It isn't a one-to-one, but at least I can tell that this is supposed to be the park's T-Rex, unlike some of the previous entries that we've covered. Overall, I really like Jurassic Park Annual, and it's a shame that there weren't more after this. I'm giving Jurassic Park Annual a thumbs up. We're looking at Return to Jurassic Park, Heir to the Thunder, a 2-issue run from 1995 by Topps Comics. This is issues 5 and 6 of the Return to Jurassic Park series, and I used to physically have these two, but they have since been lost to time. I do, however, have this run collected in Classic Jurassic Park Volume 5, Return to Jurassic Park Part 2 by IDW Publishing in 2012. Taking place, I believe, parallel to the first half of the original film, this story follows two new characters, Abby Nakajima and Derek Hoyle, who are researchers at the park that are investigating what one of the more eccentric scientists are up to. Turns out there's playing God, and then there's Dr. Gustavus. I am not trying to dunk on Tom and Mary Bierbaum's writing, but these characters feel more like archetypes rather than people, which is a similar issue that I have with Jurassic World. Abby's the spunky, rambunctious thrill seeker who has eyes for Derek, the handsome guy who is more subdued, by the books, and prefers being in the lab, making their team up feel like something out of a rom-com cliche. Sure, Owen and Claire also felt like a cliche, but unlike Owen in the first two World films, Abby has a personality. Dr. Gustavus's goals and revelations feel so mustache twirly and cartoony that even someone like Vic Hoskins would have told him to dial it back a notch, but man, is it satisfying to see him get his comeuppance. These panels are just the start of it, but I think this is a closer to full-size Dilophosaurus, which actually brings me to my next point. This is probably the second best the art has been so far in this marathon after Annual, and this one has a decent dinosaur roster with a few new species tossed in like Elaphrosaurus, Avamimus, and Lelianosaurus. As a Jurassic nerd, I do like that Derek is wearing the Kawaii Team Survivor shirt that the crew from Jurassic Park got. That's a fun little behind-the-scenes Easter egg. This one is a mixed bag with a bit of a downer ending, but hey, at least it was better than the Green Flame. I am giving Return to Jurassic Park, Heir to the Thunder a thumb sideways. We're looking at Return to Jurassic Park, Photo Finish, a 2-issue run from 1995 by Topps Comics. This is issues 7 and 8 of the Return to Jurassic Park series, and I used to have both, but 7 has been lost to time. I do, however, have this run collected in Classic Jurassic Park Volume 5, Return to Jurassic Park Part 2 by IDW Publishing from 2012. Picking up a couple of weeks after the events of both Heir to the Thunder and the original Jurassic Park film, Abby and Derek return to Isla Nublar to assist with the U.S. Army's cleanup and reclamation of the island. Sadly, their work has to be refocused when Abby is framed for breaking the no photography agreement, and she and Derek have to survive the wilderness and clear her name. Despite the art not changing from Heir to the Thunder, the artwork is weirdly inconsistent here. Some panels are a step up, while others are a step down. Again, it isn't bad, but I think Heir's art flowed smoother. However, the Stegosaurus design here is a hell of a lot better than the one in the Green Flame, so points for that. Also, want to see a juvenile Uranosaurus pimp slap an army pilot? Here you go. The plot and writing for this one feels more down to earth than air, so I feel like this story fits in more with the tone of the original Jurassic Park trilogy, and that certainly points in its favor. Return to Jurassic Park photo finish can get a little goofy in parts, but it's still a lot of fun, and with all that in mind, I'm giving Return to Jurassic Park photo finish a thumbs up. We're looking at Return to Jurassic Park Jurassic Jam from 1996 by Topps Comics. This is the ninth and final issue in the Return to Jurassic Park run, and while the original comic has always eluded me, I do have it collected in Classic Jurassic Park Volume 5, Return to Jurassic Park Part 2 by IDW Publishing from 2012, making this the last time we will be visiting this collection, as well as Topps Comics' final trip to Isla Nublar. This comic is a prequel to Jurassic Park, and it tells a tale of Muldoon having to bring in the rampaging T-Rex after a mishap with the power allows it to escape its enclosure. While the plot is nothing new and makes for a quick read, the draw for Jurassic Jam is that each page is drawn and colored by different artists, some of which have worked on the Jurassic comics we've already covered, and others have contributed to future titles that we'll look at later. Going through this book, I think my favorite pages are the ones by Paul Galassi, George Perez, Michael Golden, and Ron Lim with Keith Akin. While some might consider new art styles and teams on every page jarring, I personally think it's neat to compare the different styles. I wonder if anyone read through this comic in 1996, saw the different ways that artists draw the same characters and creatures, and became inspired to create their own art style. Heck, I just hope that people see any kind of human-crafted art and are inspired to give it a shot. We need more of that, especially these days. While I do like the varied art gallery, like I said, the plot is nothing to really write home about. So with all that in mind, I'm giving Return to Jurassic Park Jurassic Jam a thumb sideways. We're looking at The Lost World Jurassic Park, the 4-issue comic adaptation of the film published in 1997 by Topps Comics, which was also their final Jurassic title. I have the original 4 issues plus a variant cover of issue 4, but if there was a trade paperback, I never found it. I remember seeing the listing for a collected version called Classic Jurassic Park Volume 6, The Lost World by IDW Publishing, but I don't believe that was ever released. If it was in a very limited run that eluded me and would make for one hell of a collection bragging right. The plot is exactly what you'd expect. It is the criminally underrated The Lost World Jurassic Park in comic book form. Now, how does this one compare to the adaptation of Jurassic Park? Well, I can confidently say that the comic adaptation joins John Williams' score, the effects, and the toy line on the small list of things that The Lost World does better than Jurassic Park. I said what I said. For starters, the art is much better, with the human characters closer resembling the actors who play them instead of looking like action figures, albeit with a couple of odd appearance choices like Ian Malcolm's mustache or Eddie Carr having hair in the first 2 issues, and the dinosaurs actually look like Jurassic Park dinosaurs. Now, much like Jurassic Park's adaptation, The Lost World contains scenes and dialogue that were not in the final film, like the infamous boardrooms and Mombasa cafe scenes, a better explanation justifying Isla Sorna's existence, which I think is dialogue lifted straight from the book, Sarah and Nick jumping the fence of InGen's camp, Ajay's final moments, and so on. Despite the artists changing halfway through the run, Jeff Butler and Claude St. Aubin's art doesn't look that dissimilar that the switch is jarring. The pacing is also much better in this comic adaptation, with the trailer sequence occurring in the first quarter of issue 3, but admittedly some of the chase or peril sequences feel a little rushed in spots. This comic may have benefited from having a 5th issue in regards to that. I really like the comic of The Lost World Jurassic Park, and it actually got me wanting to watch the movie again, so I'm going to give The Lost World Jurassic Park, the comic adaptation, a thumbs up. Our next video will take us to IDW Publishing, where we'll look at... Oh, sweet Jesus. Folks, I'd like you to indulge me for a moment. Picture what you think is the worst thing to come from the Jurassic franchise and hold that image in your head. Respectfully, you're wrong. unless you're thinking of Jurassic Park Redemption. This 5-issue series is from 2010 by IDW Publishing, and back when I was trying to collect everything Jurassic, I had the original issues and trade paperback, all of which I sold off years ago. Taking place 13 years after Jurassic Park, we see Lex Murphy trying to keep the quarantine of the islands operational, while Tim tries to do his grandfather proud and create his own park on the mainland with a mysterious benefactor aiding him. However, as per the norm, hubris and deceit get in the way and chaos ensues. You have no idea how difficult it is to try and discuss this comic without slipping into a negative internet reviewer persona and keep it under 3 minutes. An obvious complaint that I have is the art, but if you look at artist Nate Van Dyke's Instagram, the art he's done for other properties and characters looks genuinely good. Maybe Nate was on a tight schedule. Maybe his style just doesn't work for Jurassic. Maybe he's just gotten better over time. Or given how this was in the dark ages between Jurassic Park 3 and Jurassic World, maybe it was just a case of no one caring enough to make the first Jurassic comic in 13 years and the first new story in 9 worthwhile. My biggest issue with Redemption is the writing. This was Bob Schreck's first go as a writer after years of editing comics, and someone forgot to tell Bob that shoehorning in as many legacy characters as possible does not a good story make, nor how a family tree works, apparently. In the worst plot twist ever, the mysterious benefactor turns out to be Peter Ludlow, having been saved by his, quote, elite InGen crew from the SS Venture's cargo hold. That is such a random ass pull that even the regurgitated embryos from Aliens vs. Predator Requiem call bull. I'm sorry, but if InGen staff weren't paid enough to shoot 2 people stealing a live specimen worth more money than any of us will ever have, they aren't being paid enough to recover their boss from a boat housing said live specimen and its, albeit tranquilized, multi-ton parent. Tim refers to Ludlow as Uncle Pete, when John Hammond was Peter Ludlow's uncle, something that was established in the final cut of The Lost World, and Tim's grandfather. This would make Tim and Peter first cousins once removed, and there is nothing indicating that they would have addressed each other with these titles as nicknames. Like, come on. This comic also tries to be in-your-face gory, which the film canon has never been about, and there's other side plots, disposable characters, and attempts at human drama that just don't go anywhere. Jurassic Park Redemption gets a major thumbs down. We've broken through the bottom of the barrel and are in the soil. If you haven't read this one already, please keep it that way. We're looking at Jurassic Park, The Devils in the Desert, a 4-issue series from 2011 by IDW Publishing. I used to have the 4 original issues. I don't think I had the trade for this one, but I sold them when I was trying to downsize my collection. Written and drawn by John Byrne, as in X-Men Dark Phoenix Saga John Byrne, this story follows a sheriff in a small California town investigating cattle mutilations and homicides where very little of the victims remain. Of course, the culprits turn out to be prehistoric, but not necessarily the ones you'd expect. I remember discussions as to what the devils in the title were, and I don't think anybody guessed the escaped pteranodons from Jurassic Park 3, which I think was a bold move from Byrne to pick up on and resolve that plot point from the films. I don't think their metabolism is that high that they need to eat that many cows, though. Just saying. The art is also much better than Redemption, and again, while the colors don't completely match, you can tell that these are supposed to be the pteranodons from Jurassic Park 3. While I like the visuals, some of the writing and pacing doesn't work for me. One thing that kind of bugs me about this comic is how Sheriff Tobias has history with Sarah, the wife of the first human victim of the story, and his secretary is like, hey, so Sarah's single now. Maybe you can pick up where you two left off when you finished high school. The secretary also does this with Sarah. Twice. Ma'am, there are dangerous carnivores about. People are dying. Sarah's husband's corpse isn't even cold yet, and you're trying to convince the sheriff to make a move on her? Like, read the room, lady. The first few issues are mostly enjoyable, but the arc kind of fumbles in the home stretch. Some decisions are made with the characters that come out of nowhere, and the final clash between the last remaining pteranodon and a polar bear doesn't feel as exciting as it should. Now, Redemption set the bar so low, we have to be careful not to trip over it, but an improvement is an improvement. I'm giving Jurassic Park, The Devils in the Desert, a thumb sideways. This one's okay. We're looking at Jurassic Park, Dangerous Games, a 5-issue series from IDW IDW Publishing from 2011. I used to have the 5 issues and the trade paperback with the awful cover art, but I sold them when I was trying to downsize my collection. In this book, a criminal overlord has seized control of Isla Nublar and is using it for his base of operations. An undercover CIA agent infiltrates his ranks, but is caught and left in the wilds of Jurassic Park to be hunted by dinosaurs and criminals alike. So this is kind of like an updated telling of The Most Dangerous Game, but with dinosaurs thrown in the mix. While there are still things that I don't like about this story, I do admit that this comic is better than I remember it. The more anime-esque art style works well for the human characters, and the dinosaurs actually look pretty decent. I mean, for the most part, I can tell what species they're supposed to be. I have no idea what this thing is, though, nor why the velociraptors are fully feathered this time around, but I'm just going with it. According to the back cover, this movie takes place 11 years after the Jurassic Park movies, with an S, meaning this one takes place in 2012. One of the side characters, Dr. Frances White, has been living in the wild with the velociraptors since the early days of the Jurassic Park project. So she's been out here for about 20 years, but looks like she hasn't aged a day. And despite being an animal behavioral specialist, she sees the T-Rex as some sort of mystical god that judges all souls on the island. It's weird. The action sequences aren't bad. There's a very healthy dinosaur roster here, but some of the dialogue is a bit cringe. The characters aren't terribly memorable to me, enough so that I had to go back and check their names for this review, and I hate the depiction of Peter Ludlow as an employee-abusing, gun-wielding madman. I think this is trying to justify his behavior in Redemption, but Peter Ludlow always seemed like too much of a snooty coward high on his own delusions of grandeur to exhibit this kind of behavior. This was the final original Jurassic comic published, and it was one of the last pieces of media to carry the Jurassic Park title before it was rebranded as Jurassic World. And it's unfortunate that the comics and the park brand as a whole went out with a shrug instead of a roar. I'm giving Jurassic Park Dangerous Games a thumb sideways. Before we have our wrap-up episode, I wanted to do a video covering some of the comics that were never released. I had previously mentioned the unreleased classic Jurassic Park Volume 6, The Lost World from IDW Publishing, but I want to go a little further than that. Return to Jurassic Park was supposed to have a new arc taking place in California with the revelation that Lex had smuggled 2 Procompsognathus eggs off the island at the end of the first film, only for them to escape, mature, breed, and wreak havoc. This arc would have been wild, including plot points like the kids and Alan and Ellie getting kidnapped by a right-wing paramilitary group, someone cooking and serving compies only for the meat to sedate the 20 diners and leave them as free food for a compy swarm, and John Hammond getting kidnapped by the US government and brought back to Isla Nublar to see what he knows about the Green Flame Project. There were also 2 Jurassic World comics that were announced but were quietly canceled. Jurassic World Origins by IDW Publishing would have been set when the park had opened to the public in 2005, and Jurassic World Regenesis was supposed to be an interactive online comic set around Dr. Henry Wu joining the cleanup operation of Isla Nublar in 1994. Now, this one did get further along in production, with some of the material making its way into the dinosaur protection group Viral Marketing for Fallen Kingdom. Only 3 of the planned 10 issues were realized, but the difficulties that Google Web Designer brought to the production process shut the whole thing down. Given the overall quality of the comics that will break down into stats in the wrap-up, admittedly, I'm not super upset that these comics never saw the light of day. Now, maybe these comics could have worked, but unfortunately, we'll never know for sure. Welcome to the Jurassic Park Comic-Thon wrap-up. In this video, I wanted to give out some awards and show some stats on how this marathon went. We covered a total of 15 story arcs that spanned 18 years. Of those 15 arcs, I wound up giving thumbs up to 5 or 33%, thumbs sideways to 6 or 40%, and thumbs down to 4 or 27% of them. Unfortunately, that's not a great track record, and spoiler alert, Predator does a lot better in this regard. Now, how about some awards? Worst Topps comic, Genesis. Worst IDW comic, Redemption by a mile. Worst Jurassic comic overall, Redemption by a mile. Most disappointing revisit, The Green Flame. Most enjoyable revisit, The Lost World Jurassic Park. Favorite Topps comic, also The Lost World Jurassic Park. Favorite IDW comic, Devils in the Desert. And favorite comic overall, once again, The Lost World Jurassic Park. Would I like to see more Jurassic comics in the future? I'm not entirely opposed to the idea, but whoever is working on them needs to actually care about Jurassic Park enough to actually try. Plenty of comics based on other properties have some stinkers. There's plenty in the Predator Comic-Thon, but it feels more obvious here. Many of the Topps titles felt like the teams were like, we hold the comics rights to the biggest blockbuster of all time at the time, so let's get titles out there and print money. Screw sensible plots and good dinosaur art. While the IDW comics felt like, no one cares about Jurassic Park anymore, so we can kind of half-ass it. While Topps' output was a mixed bag in general, IDW's output was okay at best. So I think a different publisher should take a stab at the comics if more Jurassic comics are to be released. Admittedly, I don't know how much influence the publisher has on these stories and whatnot, but it would be nice to see a team put the same amount of care into a Jurassic comic the same way that many of the Predator comics have. Or if you want a different example, IDW had the rights to Ghostbusters, my second favorite movie, from 2008 to 2020. And while the art got pretty stylized, the writing was fantastic because the people working on them actually cared. Then again, if you want to fix for more expanded Jurassic Universe stuff handled with research and care, check out Tom Jurassic's Tales from a Jurassic World audio series, link in the description below. With those suggestions, I'm bringing the Jurassic Park Comic-Thon to a close. I hope those who watched these enjoyed these quick reviews and that maybe you were inspired to seek out and read some of these titles. The Predator Comic-Thon won't be wrapping up until the end of July at the earliest, so if you're looking for quick comic fixes, go check those out. So until next time, this is Jurassic KM, signing off.